Okay, so good morning. This is another video about La Belle Sans Merci by John Keats. I want to talk about structure, so specifically rhythm and rhyme. I want to talk about some language choice and a little bit of imagery as well. That's quite a lot though, and I want to keep these fairly short, so I'm going to focus on the first stanza, which is, "Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing." Before anything else, we have to identify or note that that's just a really effective piece of ballad writing. We get told a lot in that opening stanza. We know that we are focusing on a knight. We know that that knight is in distress. We know that we are not that knight, and that therefore we are outside of his personal experience. We're not going to know exactly what he thinks and feels because we're not within his perspective. We are a different person talking to him. A thing that won't necessarily become clear, actually, until stanza 4, when the knight answers, and Keats doesn't help us out. We don't get the knight spoke or anything like that. We just have to work out that we're shifting from one speaker to another. But those opening 3 stanzas that describe the knight and then address him so that he can answer us, they do those things that I've said. They let us know where we are, when we are, that the tone that we're dealing with is melancholic and dramatic and romantic, and also that we are not the knight, and so we don't necessarily know the truth or the veracity of everything that follows. Let's have a look at the structure of this. Keats writes La Belle Sans Merci in iambic tetrameter for the most part. Each stanza is a quatrain, which is a classic English ballad structure, and it follows an ABCB rhyme scheme, which is to say the second and fourth lines rhyme in each 4 lines. The first and third do not. But I want to talk about the rhythm first of all, because he uses an iambic tetrameter. Now, iambic, you will recall, I hope, is anything that's made up of iambs, which is when there is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. It is the classic meter of English verse and dramatic poetry. Put into 5 iambs per line, iambic pentameter, it is your standard structure for poetry. Shakespeare writes in iambic pentameter, so do many, many, many other writers. This is not iambic pentameter, it's iambic tetrameter, which means there are 4 of them. Oh, what can ail the knight at arms? Yeah? Oh, what can ail the knight at arms? 8 syllables per line. Syllable 2, 4, 6, and 8 are stressed. And then, the first 3 lines are in iambic tetrameter, so you get the rhythm. Oh, what can ail the knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge is withered from the spring, and no birds sing. The 4th line, obviously, is different. So the thing about a rhythm is that it sets us up with expectation. We know what we think is coming. Okay, so in a 4-line stanza, a quatrain, the expectation is that we will finish satisfactorily with the same rhythm that we've had throughout. And we don't. In fact, at no point during this poem does the 4th line have the right, correct, expected number of syllables. In this case, it's 4 syllables, sometimes it's 5, it's never 8, never goes as high as that. We are always cut short. So our expectations are dissatisfied. We are not allowed to successfully complete the line, the rhythm. It doesn't finish properly, and we're left hanging. We're left unsure. We are left discombobulated, disquieted by it. It doesn't feel right. More than that, the last 4 syllables in this stanza are all stressed. You can't keep that up throughout, but we do have, what's missing is the unstressed lines. We're missing the relaxed parts. So each 4-line quatrain ends with a series of stressed syllables, which make the whole thing feel a bit more, sort of doomy. You coming to this end and it's stressed. Add to the fact that the last line of the stanza here, "and no birds sing," is an image of death, an image of sterility. Well, then we get a sense of how he's using the structure to do this. I also want to talk very briefly about the rhyme, The rhyme is on the second and fourth lines. So the first thing is that the last rhyme, the rhyme that ends each stanza, comes too quickly. We're supposed to have 8 syllables before we get to that rhyme. So the rhyme itself emphasizes the unsatisfactory nature, the unfinished, disquieting nature of this rhythm. And more than that, it ends on a solid rhyme. It's a masculine rhyme. Now, this is something that's quite odd, because in this first stanza here, the second line is iambic tetrameter, alone and palely loitering, except it's not quite, because although the iambic tetrameter kind of does work, loitering is not a word that you ever stress the last syllable of. You don't go loitering, even if that's what the poem's meter requires of you. So you do kind of swallow that, alone and palely loitering, so that when you then hit the sing and no birds sing of the last line, your stressed rhyme is echoing an only partially stressed rhyme from previously. So again, it's unsatisfying, it's unsatisfactory, it doesn't feel complete in that way. And so this is an example of how Keats uses rhyme and rhythm throughout the poem to try and to keep us on our toes. So we're not comfortable. This is a romantic ballad. It's going to tell a story of lost love, we believe. And yet not all is correct. Nothing's right. It feels wrong right from the very beginning. And he does this, as all great writers do, with a combination of techniques. He places us outside the experience so that we're not entirely sure whether or not we trust the story of the night. He makes the setting, this sort of barely described but wintry, dying landscape. The sedge has withered from the lake, no birds sing, there's no life here, it's sterile. He separates the night out grammatically as well. You notice when you see knight at arms, it's sort of parenthesized in commas, so there's a caesura before it and an end stop at the end of the line as well. And so we don't get to place him within his context. And also the way he's described, it's not the way a knight ought to be. He's palely loitering. Knights are active. They're supposed to be figures of decisive action, and he's both pale, which seems to suggest unhealthy, maybe he's not the sort of vigorous figure that we expect, and he's loitering, not waiting, not watching, not doing something that could have some sort of purpose. Loitering by its very nature suggests he is purposeless. So from the very beginning of this poem we get a sense of what's wrong, or rather we get a sense that something is wrong. We won't find out what's wrong until later. Okay, thank you.